Thanks a lot for having me. Hello, my name is Cesar, Jung-Harada. So, if you think about the way we're running our businesses today, we run the businesses as if it's the only thing that really mattered. We do everything so that we can make money, using technology, using people as human resources. And eventually, nature is just an afterthought, a good to have. Oftentimes, greenwashing, unfortunately. But if you think how the world really works, this is how the world really works. If you don't have a healthy environment, we cannot keep a healthy social order, Without a healthy social order, you cannot maintain technology. And money is just one form of technology. And so, what I'm hoping to convey to you today is that it is possible, and it's desirable, and I even think that's the only way we can have a sustainable future if we change the way we do everything. And so, I'd like to present you 3 projects, or 3 areas, and which I'm pursuing this. Unfortunately, as we run our society in a unsustainable way, one thing leads to another. And by putting the environment as the last thing, then we're creating a knock-on effect. So first we destroy environment, that impacts our health, that impacts the climate, and eventually depletes natural resources, and that leads to more political tension. So how do we avoid this? So I started by thinking what were the most valuable ecosystem. And I learned that coral are really, really important. They cover a very small area, but at the same time, they host about 25% of marine life. So I thought maybe that's something that's worthwhile to look at. I started to look at it also thinking that maybe students, children, hold some of those answers that so many researchers have been looking for such a long time. And so the first thing that I've done was to look with my very young students, maybe they're aged from 7 years old, to look at the way that we're measuring coral. So today the way we measure coral is what you see over here. This is called a quadrat. A quadrat is a square that you put on the coral, and it's 1 meter by 1 meter, and it allows you to measure coral. But it's very slow, it's very cumbersome, and also you can damage coral as you measure it. And so with my students, I just asked them, this is the state of the art. Can we do something even better? And so they didn't have any background in technology, because they are children, but they came up with this amazing idea. What if we replace the mechanical quadrat with a laser quadrat? So instead of having a square that is made of plastic, if we project a square that is made with a laser. And so they came up with this idea, and they immediately started to prototype. Learn about mechanical fabrication, learn about optics, learn about electronics. They had no background in this before. And in just about 4 days, they built the prototype of a laser quadrat. And so immediately, we took it to the lab with the best scientists in the region studying coral reef, and presented it. And the scientists were blown away, and immediately tested it in their tanks. And it turns out that it could really, really simplify their work. And so they gave us access just the next day to the National Marine Protected Area called Hoi Ha 1 in Hong Kong. And then we tested it there, and it also worked in the wild. Added bonus to this technology, being faster for measuring coral, is that we have GPS coordinates of the phone. So not only it's more accurate to measure, it's much faster, we also know exactly where you are, and using a very low-tech and high-tech device, which is a phone, a low-priced device. And so the students tested it into the wild, and it worked very well. And very importantly, they documented everything. They put all the designs, all the fabrication files, all the electronic schematics on a website called Instructables. Instructable is this website for inventors, and they document every step out of the way, so anybody else, children or adults, can follow them step by step. Fast forward, 1 year later, 2 students from the University of Hong Kong, from a master's degree, reached out to me, and they wanted to do this as their thesis project. They wanted to do this as their final project, and they wanted to make a better version of it. And so we applied for a grant, and then we got a grant to bring 10 students from Hong Kong to the Philippines. And with the students again, but this time a little bit older students, the university students, we built this robot. Half of it, you see all the frame, is actually made of bamboo that we found in the forest. And the other half, the plastic bottles, even the tires, even the ties that we used to attach the boats, they are made of garbage we found on the beach. So this robot that we made is basically half garbage, half electronics from Hong Kong. And so with this, we attach a camera underneath it, we program the drone computer that's inside, and we can map an area. And so based on this, we took it back to our lab in Hong Kong, and then we kept developing the different iterations. First, the laser quadrant, as I showed you. The second was this drone. And then we had a government's order to make a larger version to carry larger cameras. And then we kept thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if instead of one camera, we had multiple cameras? We could map a larger area, we could do this in a more reliable way. And we kept iterating on different form factor. You can see we're trying not to do 2 cameras, we're trying to do 5 cameras. And we're trying to find what is the way that we can make a very large robot, but being able to fold it and assemble it like Lego, like a tent, and deploy it on the field work. So let's say you want to take a plane, you want to land into some remote islands, and you want to deploy a very large robot. How do you do this? And so eventually we made this robot which is 5 meters in width. It has 5 cameras. Each camera takes a picture every half second. And with this, we can actually train an AI. And this AI is now able to recognize and identify and quantify coral much faster than any marine biologist. So we can basically program it, it will scan the ocean floor, and it would train an AI basically to identify the coral. So this is called CoralBot. And this technology is completely open source, and anybody is welcome to use it. We think that this is a very powerful way to map coral reef, and this can have big implications. But interestingly, one of my students, the one under the red arrow, his name is Sinan Gupta, after he graduated, asked me, hey, Prof, I would like to continue to use this technology, but for a different purpose. I would like to clean the plastic in the ocean. And so, after he graduated, I kept working with him, and we built some prototypes, and eventually he made this robot, which is called ClearBot. And what it does, it uses the same AI algorithm to identify plastic floating in the ocean, and it will just go out and swim and catch this plastic. And so you can see that now he started a company, and actually he got investment from Alibaba, Razer, and Microsoft. And so now he's a company of more than 10 people, and he's valued multiple $1 million. And that's just 3 years after his graduation. So just in a short amount of time, moved from working with secondary school students, university students, graduates, and making a startup, all for an environmental purpose. And so for me, that was a proof that you can do something even with children, and do something that's very meaningful if you're using open source. And so open source here is the key that I want you to remember. Open source is a very powerful way to enable people to work together, to document your work very well, and enable even commercialization of your idea. So if you as an academic, or if you work in the industry, think of this as an opportunity for you, not because you are afraid of losing your idea, but to enable other people to use your idea, and to help you as well. Second subject is oyster. Because I was based in Hong Kong, actually Hong Kong is in the heart of what used to be called the Pearl River Delta. Now everybody calls it the Greater Bay, because of political reason. But the Pearl River Delta pearl is because of the oyster. There used to be so many pearls in the region, and they used to keep the water clean. So pearls are a bivalve, and they basically filter water. And so one oyster, Hong Kong oysters are very large. They can filter more than 100 liters of water every day. And so when you have an oyster colony, we're talking millions of individuals, they basically can clean up an entire area for the water to remain clean. And so with my students in the architecture department, we worked on designing very low-cost oyster farms. And we do this using recycled material. So you can see here, we work with the student trying to find a way that we can make the cheapest oyster farm possible. We are using construction material wastes. Bamboo comes from construction sites, the styrofoam from the flotation comes from the fish markets, and the tarp is the only thing that, the tarp also from the construction site, the only thing we need to buy is the rope, because we want to make sure that it doesn't break under stress. So these cost us $1,000 and can be built in 1 day by a professional or 2 days by amateurs. And the next year, with my architecture students again, together with marine scientists, we figured that one of the main issues is the quantity of oysters that there are, especially the bottleneck is the babies in the oyster. Making sure that the oyster will produce fast enough was another hurdle. So in the lab, we built what we call an oyster hatchery. We call this an upwelling and downwelling system. We're trying to recreate the tide going up and the tide going down, like you have in nature, because that's the oyster environment, natural environment. And so in this sort of computer that you have here, we can control the speed of the water, the amount of food there is, also the temperature, the salinity, the nutrients that there is inside, and the idea is to optimize for the growth of the oyster. And so this was a really interesting system. The problem was that it was very expensive to operate because we have to get a truck to go and catch the water from the sea, go up the hill, up the mountain to the laboratory, and it turns out that just moving seawater every week to change the water was going to be very costly. So about a year later, with the same researcher, we thought, could we bring the hatchery to the water, to the ocean? And so this is what we did. And so what you are seeing here is basically an oyster hatchery, but instead of us bringing the water, we are bringing the hatchery to the ocean. And so we wanted to be well integrated in the oyster farming community. And we didn't want to build this ugly, squarish box that is typically government-backed research facility. But we work with the local community and local artists to bring something that the oyster farmer will identify with, that he could be even proud of, that he could even make the mascot, the symbol of the community. And so we designed this oyster-shaped structure and built all the facility to breed oysters inside. And this is also when I came up against a big dilemma. If we're using a regular battery in our floating structure, Hong Kong, maybe has many typhoons. And so if the typhoon was too strong, it might destroy a facility, even spin it around, turn it over. And if our batteries were floating in the water, then the chemistry of the battery might leak into the water. And most battery chemistry is very nasty. And so this is when I got interested in hydrogen. Hydrogen is, it's a gas, and I'm going to demonstrate it in a few minutes. But basically, even if the hydrogen energy storage was swimming into the water, there will be no negative consequences because water is made of hydrogen in parts. And so this is what we set to do. And so this is the final result. It's a 12 by 6 meter, 5-ton structure, and it is inside an oyster hatchery and a hydrogen, floating solar hydrogen production facility. And what I want to add to this is, so you can see that we started to produce hydrogen in very small quantity because we're not allowed to store a large amounts. And you can see that we have access to the oysters under the platform. So the experiment was kind of a success. And so we wanted to see if we could make this even bigger. So fast forward. So here what I want to bring the point to you is that oftentimes we think that art is here and science is here. And we think that artists are dreamers and they are very eccentric and not down to earth. And we think that scientists are very rational. But if you think about it, any amazing scientist, they have to have this incredible creativity. And if you think about great artists, they basically have a science of their crafts. And so this is why I argue that art and science are very close, because they require incredible discipline, and they require incredible creativity, most of them. And so this is where I argue that, in my view, art and science are very close, and they sort of close the loop of art and science. So what I like to say is that if you want to break through, if you want to truly find new technologies, if you want to truly create memorable moments, if you want to get adoption of the technology, then we need to break the boundaries between arts and science. We need to integrate them, if anything. So that's the second key message. The third, and this is now what brought me to Indonesia, is mangrove. So
hidup kita dimulai dari sini. Hidup yang semakin sulit ketika harga semakin melonjak tinggi. Bensin, gas, maupun listrik. Tapi kita tidak punya pilihan. Apa yang bisa kita lakukan? Bagaimana jika kita menemukan cara baru? Bagaimana jika kita dapat membuat energi bersih dari air dan matahari? Tentunya hidup kita akan jadi jauh lebih baik dengan teknologi yang kita miliki sendiri. Balon
so I prepared a little science demonstration for you guys, because I'm sure you like, who doesn't like a nice little science demonstration? So I wrote a little demo so you can see. I'm going to start it off. So basically, here we have two water tanks, and here what we have what we call a fuel cell. This fuel cell has simple tap water, and what I've done is that I've electrolyzed it. So I put some electricity inside of this cell for 2 minutes, and I created oxygen and hydrogen. We will come back to this in a minute. But what I want to show you here is that these concepts demonstrated that with a small amount of solar power and the floating structure, it will be possible to produce every day a small amount of energy, a small amount of hydrogen. And so the idea is that a typical coastal family in Indonesia doesn't use that much electricity. And so this amount of gas would be enough to produce enough gas for them to cook, would be enough to have enough for the lighting. Maybe not enough for their transportation, and definitely not for the air conditioning, but that'd be enough for some of the basic needs. And if we had more, basically hydrogen could supply all the necessities and all the energy needs of a typical Indonesian family. And so, based on that finding, we thought this is very promising. And this technology is kind of perfect, because once you are producing hydrogen, once you use it, it just goes back to being water. And so hydrogen is this really clean fuel. But of course, it's got many problems. So I will come to the problems in a minute, but basically what we realized is that we could use a similar infrastructure to what Indonesia and the people in Bali are completely used to. We could deliver this electricity or this energy in the similar formats. So with our system, if you compress it, it will be the same surface area, same volume. If you compress it, it's basically similar like an LPG. So you could pack up a lot of energy in a small format. So then came this big question. Could we generate and produce clean energy from the sun and the sea? And it turns out that Indonesia has a lot of both the sea and the sun. And so here, this is when I started to see that maybe we are touching the sweet spot, where we have nature that is respected and the primary targets of developing this new technology within business. So we're trying to do something good for the environment. We are creating something that can benefit local people, maybe indigenous community even. The tech is used to make money, but basically everything seems to be in order. So that's hopefully the sweet spot. And so we started drafting. If we wanted to develop this new technology, what kind of facility would we need? And so it looked like basically a floating laboratory or floating chemistry or biology lab, and it would have to be in the water and ideally close to a mangrove, because mangrove are a very productive ecosystem and they can benefit from oxygenation. And we could have a website that could display in real time our findings. So this not only would be open source, but it would be real-time open source, which would be quite amazing. And so we started to look at every pain point. For those of you who knows a little bit about hydrogen, you're probably familiar with these points. People will tell you hydrogen or solar is great, but it takes too much space. They will say, no problem, we're going to work in the middle of the sea, so there's no space limitation. Some people might say, compressing hydrogen takes a lot of energy, and it makes hydrogen very expensive. Actually, it's not even competitive. And I would say, of course, we don't compress hydrogen. We'll keep it at atmospheric or low pressure, so it's much less dangerous and much cheaper to operate, and also less risky. Like this, if there's no explosion of hydrogen, it would just be a puff. It would not be hurting anyone. And some people would say, yes, but compressing hydrogen takes a lot of energy, and it can only be done with those big machineries. And to this we would argue, well, if we're in the middle of the sea, and there's a lot of depth underneath us, what about we produce hydrogen underwater? So we can use the pressure that's already underwater. Electrons don't care about gravity. We basically lower our machinery and produce the hydrogen down there, and it's fine. And the last is that people would say, green hydrogen, even the greenness of hydrogen, from wind and from solar, is using actually nasty chemicals. And once you have extracted the hydrogen from the water, you're left off with some murky, dirty water that you have to treat, that you cannot release. It's basically waste. So to this, we've already started to work with people who are developing non-toxic electrolysis and catalysts. So we're taking each of those problems one by one and then dismantling them in a methodical way by working on first order principle. The second thing that we worked on is looking at the mangrove. Mangrove have this amazing biodiversity environment. And so the problem is that when you create new technology, typically you create the wastes. In our case, we produce hydrogen, but we also produce oxygen. So we can use the hydrogen for ourselves, for human consumption, but what if we use the oxygen and we pump it underwater? And when we pump it underwater, we actually improve the water quality. A lot of those waters in the mangrove area are actually low on oxygen. And so by bringing oxygen, we improve the water quality. If you have fish, you know it. You need to constantly put a bubbler to bring them more oxygen to the water. And it's exactly the same in the open waters. If we bring oxygen in those areas, we can actually improve the water quality, helping biodiversity to absorb even more CO2, improve biodiversity. The next point is that people say mangrove planting is very slow and tedious. We love to work on improving and automating mangrove planting. Some people say, yes, mangrove eventually sometimes dies out of erosion. The water currents are too strong and you just wash out the mangrove. We say there are techniques of developing biodegradable mesh to hold the soil in place and prevent erosion. Some people might say, yes, but sometimes the soil is not in good condition and the mangrove grows too slowly. And so that's something we like to work on, is working on the ideal balance of nutrients and what you can put inside of the soil. So to find these perfect spots, we went into 40 different sites in Bali. And then we look at those 5 criteria. It has to be deep enough, and the water quality needs to be decent. We need to not be in a flooded area or not too exposed to tsunami risk. It needs to be a safe place. It needs to be accessible to the public. We need to have a good community, people who actually care about the environment. And we need to have the possibility of improving the environment, to have an environmental impact. And we found this perfect site that I like in North Serangan. So Serangan is a small island in the Denpasar municipality, and we really love it. It's a small community, mostly of traditional fishermen. Many of them unfortunately displaced when they developed the Kura real estate. But it's a place that holds many promises. The fishermen love the mangrove, they really care and treasure it. And we already met with the village chief, with the local government official, and the local school heads that are really excited to train kids and to give them new job opportunity in the green energy or the green industries. We also started to look at biodiversity there, and it's already amazing, but we feel that we can help and still protect this amazing biodiversity. So this is the view of the installation. So what you see here is our dream of building this laboratory. We're in the process of building. We already acquired the material. We are in the process of getting the permissions. But we hope that in December we can actually build it and then put it in the water. And so here I would like to show you the demo of it. So after a couple of minutes, you can see that we have hydrogen and oxygen. And now I'm going to power. So you can see that I had the battery here. And I'm going to put this away. This was the tap water that I used to fill the fuel cell. And now I'm going to power this little fan only from these 2 gases. So there's no electric battery, there's only gases of hydrogen and oxygen. Thank you. Well, I guess I didn't fill it up enough. But you can get the idea. Is that normally I would plug in the solar panel to the fuel cell, you produce hydrogen, and then you can use the hydrogen to power your structure. So I'm going to try to refill it, but it will last a longer time. Not very short. Okay, I'll do this in the background as I keep talking. Okay, sorry about this. Okay. So the platform we're building is nanometer by nanometers. It's about 7 tons, and it has 10 kilowatts. And there are 3 areas of work will be research, education, and providing community service. Potentially supporting also other businesses that are looking to help with the web growth. The IoT, I mentioned that we are looking to share information real time, and so we already architected and we actually already tested all this IoT thing. So basically the ability to measure how much sun comes down on our platform, the temperature of the electrolyzer, and how much hydrogen is produced. So all of this we actually already built, and we already have a mock-up of the portal that will stream real-time data from the platform. So you'll be able to go on the website, and you'll be able to see exactly what chemicals are being used, and how much hydrogen is being produced with that particle mix. So this is also a new breakthrough in open science, is that we share our data in real time. The publications are also all open access, so we already published on the topic, and we expect there will be many different areas in which this project will contribute to, not only in marine science or electrochemistry, but a lot of other areas. I believe that hydrogen is really the future, because it's clean, and you can make the bicycle with the longest range, electric vehicle, for example, with a 5-minute charge. The Toyota Mirai can run more than 1,000 kilometers. The world's longest running drone is on a single charge, can fly for 3.5 hours. A regular electric drone can only do 15 minutes. We already fly rockets with hydrogen. We already can move boats and trucks. And in Singapore, in 2030, all the harbor crafts, all the ships that are in the harbor, will have to be electric. And I believe the same will happen eventually in Indonesia. So I really believe that hydrogen is really a key. And so we imagine we're going to be working at different scales in different times. First, we tried family scale, 1 kilowatt, and we can see that it's very feasible. Now we are experimenting at 10 kilowatts, and we want to see how much would cost this green hydrogen. Right now we don't know the number, so if you ask me the price of green hydrogen, I don't know. We don't know the price of non-toxic hydrogen because this is new. But eventually we see that we could refuel large ships, and we could do things at industrial scale. We are very fortunate, just 2 days ago, we met with the leader. Indonesia has its champion, and her name is Professor Enya Listiani, and she's amazing, and we are working closely with her, and we'll be putting ourselves under her authority, because we want to build on top of what is already happening in Indonesia. And talking about what's happening in Indonesia, Indonesia has already heavily invested in floating solar. So this is not something that is new to the country. And you already have also experimented in large biogas storage. So for you, floating flexible hydrogen storage is just one step away. And this is the roadmap of the hydrogen suggested by Professor Listiani. And we are really looking forward to integrate that timeline and potentially accelerate it by removing all these barriers and by dropping the costs of accessing this green hydrogen. So we believe that our technology is going to make that difference possible. And this is our team, very diverse and very international. And right now, we are also looking at what is the reporting model. We are looking to response on the philanthropic side, because this is still very much research, and we don't know what's the industrial potential of this, but eventually we'll be raising funds. We can imagine that we can develop this as almost like one of the holy grails of renewable energy. The more we produce this electricity, this hydrogen, the more we produce oxygen, which also will improve the water quality. So we can see that if we set it up in a way that can also benefit local people, this would basically be just a win-win all the way. The energy needs for Indonesia is aimed to quadruple in the next 25 years. But if you look at the CO2 that Indonesia has been emitting, it's actually even more than this. And so if we don't replace the energy production of Indonesia by cleaner fuel, this could be a terrible disaster for Indonesia. The energy mix right now has a small part from renewable energy, but it needs to be dramatically more. Because Indonesia has a potential for it. Indonesia has this massive water. It has all this sun. So why not tapping these two things that you guys have the most in the world, pretty much? And I think it's particularly true for you guys. We understand this because in Jakarta, where we are here today, the air quality is very bad. And this is largely due because of transportation and because of energy production. And so this is why it is an imperative, in my opinion, to adopt this green technology very quickly. Also because we don't want to be sorry to our children and tell them that we didn't do this just because, trying to save a bit of money. So, again, I believe that we have those choices, and we can avoid this knock-on catastrophe, this cascade of disaster. And I believe that these are 3 keys to do this right. First, having the correct order of priority. 2, breaking down the barriers between arts and science. And 3, working in open source, in open science, to not only enable yourself to work faster, but enable other people too to work on the same topic. Thank you very much.